Back so soon? Oh no, what happened?
A little incident at the dog park. We gotta head to the vet.
Oh, not again. These bills.
We can use CashNet USA. We can apply in minutes, get a fast decision, and have the money in the account as soon as the same business day. All right, Cheddar, back in the car.
When you need money fast, be the hero. All loans subject to lender approval. Speed of funding is subject to verifications and your bank's processing times. See cashnetusa.com for more details.
Welcome to True Crime Garage. Wherever you are, whatever you are doing, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Nick, and with me, as always, is a man with a simple reminder that it is not okay to remove the ankle monitor. Here is the captain.
It's good to be seen and good to see you. Thanks for listening. Thanks for telling a friend.
Today, we are happy to be featuring Grain Belt Beer Premium Lager. It has the word premium on the can, so you know that it's good. This is a very traditional American Midwest lager, golden in color with light malt flavor and a little hop aroma and bitterness, and it's very refreshing. The days are warming up, and there is nothing better, my friends, after mowing the lawn or a couple rounds of frisbee golf than a few ice-cold lagers, and this is a great one. ABV 4.6%, garage grade 3 3/4 bottle caps out of 5. And here's some shout outs to our good garage friends for helping us to fill up the old fridge for this week's show. First up, a cheers to Bailey from Charlottesville, Virginia.
And a big We Like Your Jib goes out to Andrea from Harrisburg, PA.
Here's a long distance cheers to Renee from Grants Pass, Oregon.
And a big tall cans in there goes out to Mojo in Burlington, Vermont.
How about a shout to Holly Winton in Boulder, Colorado? And last but certainly not least, we have Kathleen from Yorktown Heights, New York. Everyone we just mentioned went to truecrimegarage.com, clicked on the pint glass, and helped us out with this week's beer run. And for that, we thank you.
Yeah, BWERRUN Beer Run. Make sure if you're on YouTube, make sure you go to our YouTube, True Crime Garage TV, and subscribe. And Colonel, that's enough of the business.
All right, everybody gather around, grab a chair, grab a beer. Let's talk some true crime. Terry Lee McCoy lived alone in a nice ranch-style home with 38 acres of land. Terry loved the outdoors, and one of the features of his beautiful property was a large duck pond. Terry was getting ready to sell his property, but before he could, he vanished. Foul play was suspected by most almost right away. Terry was well-liked and lived in a wonderful community. Members of that community banded together and searched for the man. Anyone with information relating to Terry Lee McCoy's still unsolved case is asked to contact the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension tip line at 1-877-996-6222. To remain anonymous and possibly eligible for a reward, please contact the Crime Stoppers of Minnesota. This is True Crime Garage. Today, we are going back in time to that dreaded COVID year of 2020. We are going to go to Wheaton, Minnesota. This is in Traverse County. So we are talking about West Minnesota, right by both of the Dakotas, right? By both the Dakota state lines. This is a really cool area. Wheaton is about 2 square miles with about 1,400 folks living there. This should be a very peaceful area, especially out on State Highway 27, where then 68-year-old Terry Lee McCoy was living. Terry was a retired construction heavy equipment operator. Terry was married, but sadly his wife had passed away years before our true crime story takes place. As a young man, Terry attended vocational school for welding and heavy equipment operation. In the late 70s, he married his late wife, Catherine. At the time, Catherine had a son named Paul, and then Terry and Catherine expanded the little family of 3 to a family of 5 after welcoming another son. This is Brock, and then their only daughter, Carrie. Terry was in the process of selling his home and property in 2020. This is a large and beautiful property. It's about 38 acres, featuring a large duck pond. So the front of the property has a long driveway surrounded by trees. And then it opens up into a little roundabout with a large outbuilding that sits across from a very nice rectangle-shaped ranch-style home. The landscaping, it appears, a lot of it was quite well thought out. A lot of thought was put into this landscaping. There are strategically placed trees through the back portion of the property and what looks like plenty of pathways to travel. Terry loved spending time outdoors, so this property only makes so much sense with this dude's lifestyle. He was into fishing, he was into hunting, and if this property were mine, Captain, it would be hard to get my ass off the back porch. Now, shockingly so, Terry Lee McCoy was reported missing on Thursday, June 18th of 2020. From the report, here is what has been released to the public. Terry McCoy was preparing to move from his Wheaton, Minnesota farm to transition to an assisted living facility. So he was going to go live with his good friend Mike, okay? And so when these articles and online articles describe this as assisted living facility, there's some question that I put onto that here, Captain, because it's reported several different ways. We know he's going to go live with his friend Mike. That's not the question. And Mike is even on record showing the news like, this is my home. Come on inside. Here's the room that Terry was going to move into. These two were friends for a very long time. Now, does Mike live on a property that has assisted living facilities there? Possibly. That part is not clear. So both could be very true. However, the important thing here is to know Terry McCoy, his plans were to sell the home and property and move in with his buddy Mike. This is a complete change of lifestyle. This is going to be a new chapter in Terry's life and very different from his younger years. These two have been friends for over 4 decades. So longer than you and I have known each other, Captain. The best friend, as said, his name is Mike Duggar. This is from KARE 11 News, who did a fantastic job. They, by far, the most coverage of this case has been done by KARE. The friend tells KARE that Terry McCoy was his best friend of 47 years, and Terry planned to move in with him as soon as the farm was sold. Now, Terry is reported missing because when the prospective buyers showed up at his home on June 18th, 2020, he's not there. Terry's not there, but they saw what they say are possible signs of a struggle.
Right.
These prospective buyers, they've pretty much worked everything out with Terry McCoy, with the exception of the closing. Now, the closing was set for June 22nd, so just days after Terry is reported missing. And oddly enough, I think this would be a unique situation. I don't think we've found another case that's like this where the buyer of a home and property are the ones to report the current owner as being missing.
Yeah, it probably was pretty odd. We have basically an agreement worked out. We just have to work out a couple of the details, and now we can't get a hold of him, so now we have to report him missing. And initially, there was no foul play suspected, right? But
yes and no, depending on who you talk to.
right. And that's something that I find weird in this case.
Yeah, and I think you're spot on with that. So I want to kind of clear up this sale of the home because the sale of the home itself is a complicated situation, I believe. So Terry's selling the home and 38-acre property to the Druick family. This is a small family, and these folks are much, much younger than Terry McCoy. They originally had set in place for a closing to take place earlier, prior to him going missing. But there were some complications with the title. Now, keep in mind, this is the COVID year, so everything was strange and weird, and some things just weren't working at all this year. There were complications that there were setbacks for the sale of the home and the transference of the property and the monies. He was going to sell the home to these people. It kind of fell through. There were some setbacks, and they simply moved back the closing date. He's got a much longer relationship with these buyers than what we would typically see. And anybody that's purchased a home, you know that there usually is some kind of communication between you, the buyer, and the seller. So the buyers call the sheriff's office or the Wheaton Police Department, and they say, hey, look, something's not right. Can you come out here and check on the property and check on this guy? So we have the Traverse County Sheriff's Office will eventually show up, and they are looking through the place. Unfortunately, Captain, they do not find Terry McCoy. And according to what the Sheriff's Office, tell the news, the public, they found nothing suspicious at the scene. And if they were looking for a breadcrumb trail as to where old Terry was, they didn't seem to find that either.
Yeah, but this is also not a normal situation or a normal missing person situation where you go, okay, well, let's go look for Terry. He lives in this apartment. It's about 1,500 square foot. Or let's go look for Terry. He lives in a big house, a 3,000 square foot house, and on a 1/4 acre property. This becomes a little more difficult because not only do you have to search the house, but you have to search almost 40 acres of land.
So their statement, the sheriff's statement of no suspicious activity, well, that statement to the public is going to come with some very well-deserved pushback from Terry's family and friends. So here we go. This is from W-Day TV News out of beautiful Fargo, North Dakota. We have Sheriff Trevor Wright. He's currently the sitting sheriff as well. Said there was nothing suspicious about McCoy's disappearance. Quote, there was a broken chair that he might have been sleeping in, and he may have fallen and bumped his head, end quote. This is what Wright said in the interview. Now, we mentioned Terry's kids earlier. They were born, I believe, in the late 70s, so now they're grown. Terry's daughter is Carrie McCoy. She calls her father regularly. In fact, nearly every single day she calls to check in on her father, who is living alone. This is pretty much a scheduled daily call. She calls her dad as usual on June 18th, and she says the phone is picked up. Someone picks up the phone, and it's answered by someone from the sheriff's office. She was told that they were there because her father was reported missing by the couple that was buying his home.
Right.
Here's where we need to go through the conflicting stories. The buyers call in to the authorities because Terry's missing, and they said with their untrained eyes that they see signs of a struggle. Sheriff says that there's nothing suspicious other than Terry may have fallen and bumped his head.
Yeah, and hold on for a second. One of the things that's suspicious is a 68-year-old man makes plans to move in with his friend, and he's going to sell this property, and he is not, and we're not able to reach this individual to tie up some of these details. He wants to sell his house. It's not like he's being forced to sell his house. So that's the first red flag, suspicious that they can't get a hold of him. And then when you go to his house, guess what? Terry's not there. That's suspicious. That's your first red flag.
Yes. So they're there, the authorities. There's no sign of Terry. Here's what they do find. A broken chair. This is much more important than just any old chair, right?
Yeah.
This is rather important because this is air quotes, Terry's chair. Sure, there are plenty of other chairs in the home, but this one is the one that he is always sitting in. In fact, several people said that most nights Terry would fall asleep in this chair. They also find Terry's shoes, wallet, keys. He has 2 vehicles, and both of those vehicles are found at the property. So to me, and like the captain already said, that is suspicious. But if the sheriff is right, that there's nothing suspicious that happened, then we should assume that Terry did not go too far away. So this is going to trigger a large search for Terry, with many persons from the community joining the search efforts. I'll defend the sheriff in saying this. If he arrived, if his team arrived at the property, they view everything and they are trying to deduce what they think took place, it is conceivable that this old man had an accident, fell and bumped his head, as the sheriff said. It's a very large property. There's a large, let's call it a body of water. It's referred to as a pond, but anybody that looks at aerial views of this area, it's a very large pond. I'll back up the sheriff on this. I think this statement, we need to keep in mind, we do not know how early in the game the statement was given to the news, right? If this was given within hours of him being missing, I can see and understand that the sheriff or somebody had the thought that maybe we're going to find him on this property somewhere, or maybe we're going to find him in the pond.
No, I agree with you. It all depends on when this is shared with the media, because even if you go, hey, there's a couple red flags, but this is too early. We just got it reported that he's missing. Let's see if we can find him first before we give any indication that there was foul play. But if I'm law enforcement, I'm walking around this property now, we're in the house, we can't find Terry. We find his phone, wallet, his keys, right? So the whole time I'm searching this 40 acres, I'm thinking in my head, phone, wallet, keys, phone, wallet, keys. My life used to be so breezy with my phone, my wallet, my keysies. Adam Sandler. Shout out to Adam Sandler.
I think a more appropriate statement to the media at the time would have been, we are yet to have searched the entirety of this very large property.
Right.
And we have reason to be here, and we have reason to believe that a search is necessary. That's what I think would have been more appropriate.
I agree. You're now hired. I'm hiring you. You're now the new sheriff.
I would love to be a sheriff.
You know, I think you'd pull off the outfit pretty well. You might have to put on a little bit of weight in your midsection to hold up the big belt.
I'm no Jensen, but I would make it work.
No Jensen, but one hell of a colonel.
So the report is Terry, it was reported as 6 foot tall, about 250 pounds, with gray hair and blue eyes. Terry is bald on top, and in most pictures that I've seen, he's wearing a hat. Terry was last seen in town by several folks the day before he was reported missing. Now, I have reports that state that he was last seen in town the day prior at 2 p.m., but other reports say that he was last seen as late as 5:30 p.m. on that Wednesday.
And do you know where he was seen?
Yeah, and so a lot of this stuff on the surface seems very strange, but once you kind of parse through it, it all starts to make sense, and we see that with so many cases. So a lot of the reports state that he was seen in town just kind of doing daily routine stuff, but the better reports state that he was going around town, and this is important, right? So we have multiple people that see him the day before, which I like, having independent witnesses that are reporting similar occurrences or statements.
And I believe some of the eyewitnesses actually knew him personally, right?
Yeah, well, and part of it too is he was seen at several different locations in town. He was posting flyers about an auction. I can't say this with 100% certainty, but look, I'm a fake detective. I'm sure that the auction, he's downsizing his entire life. He's moving from this huge property to a 1-bedroom. He's renting a bedroom from his buddy.
Right.
He's auctioning off stuff at his home and property. And as we said, he's got multiple vehicles. There's a small boat on the property. There's lots of furniture. So, you don't have to be Sherlock Holmes to figure out this guy's days away from closing the sale of his home and property, he's auctioning off stuff at his home. So he's spotted by multiple people that day. Of course, the timing, right? We can't get great confirmation of, was it 2 p.m. or 5 p.m., 5:30 p.m. Of course, the timing is imperative to the missing person search and investigation. However, there was absolutely foul play in this case. And I believe whatever went down, it happened much later than 5 or 5:30 p.m. that Wednesday night.
Or it happened in the morning, right?
Correct. Well, yes, I think it's fair to say the morning. The problem here is we don't get a time on when the buyer showed up to the property and said that they couldn't find Terry.
But the other difficult thing here, though, for me is you have this guy. He's a grandpa. Everybody says he's a fun guy. He likes to laugh.
6 grandkids.
He likes to joke around. He has a good friendship. You know, he's almost 70 years old and has a good friendship where they're going to partner up, and it's probably going to save him some money and hassle with, 40 acres is a lot to take care of. And then you have this auction. Like you said, that makes a lot of sense because we're going to sell a bunch of my items because I can't take those with me. Before the auction happens and before the sale of the house, is there anybody that would benefit from him not being able to sell the property? Because I could see a situation where you go, well, this guy's going to sell the house and he's going to sell every item he owns, and maybe he's going to end up blowing all his money, and he's going to leave me with nothing.
Yes, that would be a concern for someone, I would guess. And you have to look at it under that lens. Now, back to his property, we do know the pond was searched, the property was searched, the sheriff was doing their due diligence on that regard. Now, one thing that Terry's daughter, Carrie's going to push back on big time is there's blood found inside the home. This would be near the broken chair, the chair that he always sat in, the chair that he sometimes fell asleep in. I think I've seen pictures of this crime scene, and I say it's that because I think whatever went down to explain Terry's disappearance is something happened inside that home, and that blood is indicative that it happened there. Something happened, started or ended there. And what I think is unfair, though, is in a lot of the news coverage of this case, it's described as a pool of blood, which I think when people try to imagine that, they're picturing a very kind of large puddle of blood. That is not the case here from the images that I've seen. And I've seen a couple of images of this crime scene. It's a large enough amount of blood that somebody should have concern, especially with somebody missing. But it's also a smaller amount of blood that where if there was no one missing, you could walk into that room and go, oh man, somebody sliced open their finger. You know, it's I would describe it in that manner. But there was blood found near the broken chair.
So if I have a big coffee mug and I place it on this pool of blood, does it cover it up? Or do I need a saucer? Do I need a saucer? Do I need a large plate? Would a large plate cover it up?
No, it's more like a bath mat would cover it up. And again, it's not like a solid puddle of blood. It's more like spatter.
Right.
And we also have Carrie, who would later tell different news outlets that she specifically told the sheriff there's no way her dad walked away, whether on purpose or he bumps his head and he's confused and walked away. She says Terry recently had a couple of surgeries, so he wasn't very mobile. In fact, there was a brace that was necessary for him to use just to walk around. That brace was found with Terry's other belongings at his house. Further, Terry had a medical rod in his back. Carrie McCoy said, "It made me sick to my stomach." She's talking about her interaction with the sheriff and what she describes as their lack of urgency and concern in this matter. She states, quote, "My dad couldn't even get his mail. He would drive to his mailbox." You make countless decisions every day, but one of the easiest and most important decisions you can make is securing your home with Simply Safe. Traditional security systems only take action after someone has already broken in. But Simply Safe's Active Guard outdoor protection can help prevent break-ins before they happen. AI-powered cameras backed by live professional monitoring agents monitor your property and detect suspicious activity. If someone's lurking around or acting suspiciously, those agents see and talk to them in real time, activate spotlights, and even contact police, all before they have had a chance to get inside your home. I love Simply Safe. I love the peace of mind that it gives me. And guess what? The captain was talking the other day about we all need to relax. There is no better relaxing feeling than knowing that my property is secure. When I go to bed at night, I set the alarm. When I leave for work, I set the alarm. Staying in for a late movie night, set the alarm. Leaving work, leaving the office, set the alarm. I even check my outdoor cameras while I'm on vacation just to see what the weather is like back at home. Simply Safe gives you peace of mind, and it will help you relax. You will feel confident that your home, your property, your business is protected. If something happens, you will know. You will be the first to know. Visit simplysafe.com/garage to claim 50% off of a new system with professional monitoring plan and get your first month free. That's simplysafe.com/garage. There's no safe like Simply Safe.
Back so soon? Oh no, what happened?
A little incident at the dog park. We gotta head to the vet.
Oh, not again. These bills.
We can use CashNet USA. We can apply in minutes, get a fast decision, and have the money in the account as soon as the same business day. All right, Cheddar, back in the car.
When you need money fast, be the hero. All loans subject to lender approval. Speed of funding is subject to verifications and your bank's processing times. See cashnetusa.com for more details.
Summer is just around the corner, and the folks at Mint Mobile have a hot take. Getting a summer bod is out, and getting your savings bod is in. This spring and summer, everyone wants skimpy wireless bills and fat wallets. And with premium wireless plans for just $15 a month, you can have both without breaking a sweat or the bank. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text, delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. I, like everyone else, used to have the big-name wireless service providers, but that came with an inflated monthly bill. With Mint Mobile, I get that same quality and reliable service with a nice fit and trim monthly bill. This year, skip breaking a sweat and breaking the bank. Get your summer savings and shop premium wireless plans at mintmobile.com/TCG. That's mintmobile.com/TCG. Upfront payment of $45 for a 3-month 5GB plan required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customer offer for the first 3 months only. Then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. Getting your hands on Ozempic and Wegovy is enough of a hassle. Negotiating with your insurance provider shouldn't be something else you need to worry about. Ro can help you understand if GLP-1s are right for you and your goals. But that's just the beginning. If you're eligible for GLP-1s and want to see if you are covered, all you have to do is submit your insurance card and Ro will take care of the rest. There's no paperwork, no negotiating, no waiting on hold. Ro's free insurance checker will send you a comprehensive report of your coverage details so you can make a decision that's right for you and your goals and your budget. Plus, Ro members have support throughout the process. You'll have access to your provider on demand for any questions. Go to ro.co/garage for your free insurance check. That's ro.co/garage to see if your insurance covers GLP-1s for free. Go to ro.co/garage for black box warning and full safety information about GLP-1 medications.
All right, we are back. Cheers, mates, to the windows, to the walls. Cheers to you, Colonel.
Cheers to you, Captain, to the walls, to the windows. And cheers to the people in the back. The first stage of the search was Terry's property, including an extensive search of the pond and the search of the area surrounding this property. The pond as said, was large and it was drained. Nothing was found. If you go looking for pictures on the interwebs with Terry McCoy, one picture that's it's like cute and endearing, but it's also very heartbreaking at the same time. It's a picture of him holding a duck. So that duck pond was a big part of his love of this property. And those ducks and geese that were on that pond, they were like considered his pets. And so we should point out here, I think that one big portion of this story that isn't said outright, but it's an underlining important part of this story. He's moving there because of these surgeries, because he lives on this huge property that he can no longer take care of. And he's downsizing his life out of necessity. This all is happening during 2020, the COVID year, which we all know the complications that went with that year. And I'm somebody that experienced my own complications, but they pale in comparison to what this older gentleman was experiencing with surgeries and such. As said, many members of the community joined the search. One such person was Drew Donnelly, who told the local news nobody had anything ever bad to say about Terry. He was a well-liked person. And Drew goes on to talk about how nice of a community Wheaton is and how great the people there are, adding Wheaton is such a great place to live, and it's probably why Terry came to live here with us. Terry's daughter, Carrie, says the support from the Wheaton community was overwhelming. From what I've seen and heard in my research, this is most certainly a wonderful community. However, over 800 episodes of True Crime Garage will tell you that very bad stuff can still happen in very nice areas and communities.
Wheaton.
Volunteers joined family, friends, and law enforcement in a search that stretched out over the course of 19 days, looking for Terry McCoy before his body was eventually found on July 6th. This was a Monday. Now, oddly enough, it took this amount of time to find his body, and when the body was found, it was found at the same time that KARE 11 News was interviewing Terry's son Brock and Terry's daughter Carrie for the news. From the clip that I saw, it appears that they were not notified until sometime after filming had stopped.
Right.
And of course, they very likely needed to confirm identification. The announcement was the Traverse County Sheriff's Office announced it had recovered a man's body from the river Monday with the help of the Douglas County Water Rescue, the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, and the Wheaton Police Department. The announcement stated the recovery of an adult male body from the Mustinka River northeast of Wheaton. The body is being transported to the Ramsey County Medical Examiner's Office for an autopsy and positive identification. Where the body was found, where the body was spotted, this is near a small bridge going over the river.
Mm-hmm.
And this was spotted by two civilians that called it in. Authorities later confirmed that it was, in fact, the body of Terry McCoy. My guess, Captain, I couldn't find confirmation of this, but I think he was in the water the entire time that they were looking for him. I think he was killed the night before he was reported missing. He was killed at his home inside and then somehow transported that night to the location where he was eventually found.
Yeah, and I've seen different reports. I mean, one of them is that he's found basically in a creek bed. But 11 miles from the home, that's a large radius for law enforcement to be able to search.
Yes, 11 miles. I do want to point out something here, jumping ahead a little bit. This location of where the body was recovered from the river is reported as several different distances from Terry McCoy's home. I personally, however, believe the far most credible sources say that the body was found 7 miles from his home. But again, it's reported 7 miles, 9 miles, 11 miles. I've seen one report that said 20 miles, but there are a couple very credible sources that state 7 miles. So with nothing less to go on, I'm going to go with that. Again, this is by a small bridge going over the river. He could have been dropped from above. Note, this is not a high bridge at all, or he could have been dragged down and rolled in. But if you use that method, you're going to have to get in there with the body and move it to the center of the river. I creek bed makes it sound like too shallow for me. Or any description like that. I just think that can't be accurate because of a couple of details that we learn about where the body's recovered from. One, the body was nude and was successfully weighted down for a period of time. And they recovered this item, this with 150 pounds of log chain.
Yeah, that's on purpose.
Yes. You wrap the body in this log chain and then you put it in the deepest part of the water and you hope that it never surfaces. And likely what happened is at some point he surfaced and they may have walked over this portion or walked by or even observed this area earlier and not found him. And that would be because he was successfully weighted down for a period of time. I couldn't get my hands on the actual autopsy report. However, one of the details from that report that has been released showed that Terry McCoy had been shot in the back of the head.
Yeah. Somebody that knew he was going to be asleep in his chair. I think the other thing here is, like you said, there's not a lot of reports about this autopsy other than, the Ramsey County medical examiner. They ruled it a homicide, obviously, because of the gunshot. But I wish there was a little bit more because he's not a tiny guy.
No.
So this doesn't seem to me to be a one-person job.
Some speculation here, some garage speculation.
Give it to me.
I would have to believe that they know the caliber of the bullet in the gun.
Definitely. Bingo, boingo.
Well, we can't say definitely because we have reviewed at least one case where the perpetrator went to extensive efforts to cover that up, and we, in that case, do not know the caliber of gun that was used. But the way that he is recovered, the brief description we get, I think bingo is appropriate there, Captain. I think one could go 99% bingo on this. And I don't want to get too descriptive on the ways that one would successfully conceal what kind of caliber of gun it was used. So I think that's holdback information. The other item, as you pointed out, 250 pounds. He's not a small guy. If he was in fact killed inside his home, anybody, and I mean, unless you're Andre the Giant, you need help moving this body, or you got to get creative to move.
It's possible that Macho Man or Hulk Hogan might have been able to move him, but again, very large, and I'd almost argue maybe more than two people. The problem, like you said, is because the house sits back and because of the landscaping, is it possible that nobody saw anybody go to his house, or did somebody park a ways away? But the problem with them parking a ways away is you have to then move the body. But
yeah, and the size of the property and the way that it's situated there, I think it would be highly unlikely that people would have a good idea that anybody was coming and going from that property during the day and at night. And the thing here is, keep in mind, if he's weighted down with this chain, that's an additional 150 pounds.
Wow.
And my guess is I think he was rolled and dropped off the bridge, because I think that loosened him up from the weight, and that started the process of him surfacing. And I'll say this case is not, it looks like it's been heading in the right direction for some time. I'm fearful that they've hit a giant roadblock here. And the other concern I have is that had this person or persons been successful in concealing this body, we would have been 10 steps behind where we are right now in the investigation.
Yeah. And they might never have found the body. And,
correct.
And then also,
that's what I'm saying. Had they been successful, we would have never recovered him, and we wouldn't know about the gunshot wound. One thing I would want to look at too is this log chain. So 150 pounds of log chain, it gets difficult to make a great determination if something came from his property due just to the nature and size of his property. But I would be talking with the people that visit that property often, his loved ones that knew him best, and trying to confirm, was that something that the killer used that they had access to, or was that something that the killer retrieved from Terry's property and used it because he or she had to? There could be identifiers on that chain of where it was purchased, or maybe where it was stored, or who it belonged to. Of course, you're going to have that same thought with the bullet. And so those are some of your leads there. And then your other leads are, as the captain said, who would have a motive to kill this older gentleman, this peaceful man. And as said, the community, Terry was known for being nothing but a kind soul. A celebration of life brunch was held on Saturday, August 1st. This was at Evergreen Knoll Park. And then a graveside service was at St. Michael's Cemetery. This is in Farmington, Minnesota.
I mean, if I'm law enforcement, I'm asking the community, is there any person that we know that had any vendetta or anything against Terry? Was there any recent argument made? And if not, okay, fine. Moving on from there. Then I'm looking into who called to tell us that he was missing, the buyers of his property. And then I'm asking around, I'm talking to family members, I'm talking to friends, I'm asking them, were they suspicious at all that he was going to back out of the deal? I believe that the purchase agreement was already signed and they were just waiting for closing. So that seems a little far-fetched, and also kind of seems far-fetched that they would be the ones to alert the police that he was missing. But we've seen stranger things. So I'm looking into them. And then you have to look into the family. I believe he has a daughter and a son. Were they against the selling of this property? Did one of them want or wish that their dad would gift them the property, or take the property and maybe devalue it a little bit so they could move in and keep the property in their family? I mean, it's 40 acres. That's a big deal. And there are some children of parents that get attached to a property and hope that the property remains within their family. And so I think if the family was going to be honest with themselves, they should expect that they're going to be looked into as, possibilities, because we don't have really any sign of breaking and entering. So then the question becomes, does Terry just leave his house unlocked, or do other individuals have keys? And so those are the people that I'd look into first.
Commonly, there are 5 reasons that person A would want to kill person B, right? Motive. What was the motive for the murder? 1, jealousy. 2, revenge. 3, greed. 4, power and control. 5, covering up another crime. So in this case, which is not always the case, I think we have some very obvious persons of interest here, people to start with in your investigation. And look, we pointed out earlier that the sale of this home was complicated more so than most house sales.
Right.
Part of this was, according to Terry's friend Mike, Terry had told Mike that, and I'll pull this right from KARE News. He says, Terry was ready to sell and move on to the next chapter of life. Quote, he wanted to sell it, meaning the home and property. He was happy because he was going to have money in his pocket and he was going to come here, Mike recalls. Then he wanted to take a couple of trips with the money, probably grow old here too, until we got tired of each other or whatever. Okay, now we already pointed out that it's very obvious to me that Terry is moving and selling this property completely out of necessity. This is not something that he wants to do. If he was very healthy and very active and going to be able to be active, he would stay at this property. His life has changed due to these surgeries and due to his advanced age. He needs to move on to that new chapter of his life.
Yeah, and that's going to be very expensive to hire the help to take care of the 40 acres.
Yes, and I would guess, based off of his education and his career background, that he would have some retirement money coming in, or at least Social Security. So he does have that income. However, right, one of the complicated parts of the sale of this home is the agreement with the buyer is that the buyers would pay him the amount of that he still owed on the mortgage. So they would relieve him of that mortgage payment. And then he was going to receive, his words to Mike were $25,000 to maybe $30,000 cash under the table. Now, that sounds very strange and maybe like a shaky, shady deal here. But again, I hate to keep barking up this tree, but it was the COVID year. Things were different. And a lot of times somebody could offer you more than what a bank will value your home at, right? To secure, hey, I fell in love with this property. I fell in love with this house. We got to have it. This is the one. This is the one right here. And the guy wants, these are numbers are not specific to this case. We're just coming up with hypothetical numbers. The guy wants $125,000, but the bank says that the home is only worth $100,000. So the bank is only going to give the new buyer a loan for the $100,000. Why? Because if the buyer moves in and stops paying the mortgage, they come and take the home. Well, they can't recoup their full loan amount if the home isn't worth the loan amount. Now, in this case, the seller wants X amount of dollars for the home. And so the buyer and seller come to an agreement that, here's the bank saying that I'm pre-approved for this loan amount for the sale of your home. I understand you want more than that. I will give you cash, or I will write you a check. Now, where I get concerned and where I think some people should get concerned is $25,000 cash or check is a lot of money.
That's motive.
And maybe not a whole lot of people know about that. But what person would know about that? The buyers. The buyers would absolutely know about that. However, I do want to point out here, I don't think, and there's nothing to suggest that cash or check or whatever it was to be had actually exchanged hands. Now, if it wouldn't make any sense either to kill the seller so you can avoid paying the $25,000 on top of the mortgage, because whoever the home and property goes to may not agree with the sale of the house to you.
Yeah, but here's what happened though. I mean, the buyers would know that the purchase agreement had already been signed. So after we find Terry murdered, the property sale becomes a legal dispute. And
that's the key word, a dispute. So you wouldn't kill the seller to chance that you won't get the house. Not a smart person wouldn't, because it would be a dispute. It wouldn't be a guarantee that you're getting the home for a cheaper amount.
But they did know that the purchase agreement was signed. So I think that would lean in their favor. I'm not saying they're guilty, but I'm just saying that if you're law enforcement, you have to go over this,
of course,
this family with a fine-tooth comb.
100%. I just want to make it clear that it would seem to be risky. A really backwards idea if your motive for murdering this guy was getting the house and property at a cheaper amount. Right. You risk losing the house and property altogether. I don't think a smart person would make that move. It wouldn't be an intelligent move. Now, so you got to look at the Druwick family, at the buyers. Of course, you're going to look at them. However, what we do know is, looking back in hindsight, them taking over the property and the house gets locked up in the courts for a very long time after Terry McCoy's death, without being privy to certain information that the sheriff's office is and the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension is privy to. I'm comfortable moving on from the buyers as what I would say, moving them from persons of interest to an actual suspect. You also bring up a good point here, Captain. You have children of this guy that might have a vested interest in the property or the money that comes from the sale of that property. And we've seen in some cases where you go, so-and-so, you were due to inherit X amount of dollars and X amount of property. Why wouldn't you just wait for your mom or dad or parents were getting old? Why wouldn't you just wait? And some people can't wait. Some people can't wait for, as disturbing as this sounds, some people can't wait for mom or dad to die to get their hands on whatever it is that they're hoping to inherit. As we said, motive number 3, greed. Financial gain such as inheriting money, insurance payouts, or eliminating business rivals can motivate individuals to kill other individuals.
One of the reasons why we're covering this case is because of Terry's daughter saying, hey, this is an injustice and we need information. And if you're the one that started the fire, you normally don't go around and try to gather up information to or put a spotlight on this crime, if that makes any sense. You know what I mean? Like,
well, she's the one that appears to be very heartbroken. And look, we've seen what that can be a put on. That can be a dog and pony show. With her, I feel like it's genuine. And with her, you're right. I think pointing out that she is offering up money for information in this case. I've seen it reported $3,000, also reported $5,000. I think some of the confusion is that I do believe the sheriff went and asked and requested for additional monies to be added from the community to that reward money. And so there is a reward out there for information. And Carrie's concern, of course, she wants to get justice for her father, but a growing concern of hers has to be that this investigation is dragging on. And it's 2025 now. We're getting very close to 5 years that this poor man has been killed. And I don't know that they're much closer to figuring it out or having the evidence to bring someone to court than what they had about a year to a year and a half into this investigation. Now, part of that could come from another person of interest. Now, this would go to a different motive, and that motive would be revenge. And we say revenge here because there's somebody that the public looked at with a side eye here. This is Pastor Danny Barnes. So Danny Barnes has a record, a rap sheet. He's got past convictions. He was a pastor at one time in the Wheaton area. From my understanding, one of the big things that he did with his ministry was he ran a halfway house. This is a long time ago. This would be, Captain, I would say, early 2000s. So he was trying to help former inmates, which he was a former inmate at one time himself.
right.
He was trying to assist these men when they get out with drug and alcohol rehabilitation. Now, through his work, he gets involved in some shady business himself. This is quite complicated, so I'm even hesitant to try to tell this story. But the short of it is this pastor, he gets convicted of basically a home invasion and assault. Now, it sounds like he and some of the other guys from the church were trying to force one of the church members' sons into a rehab, and that they did it by force. They were pretty aggressive and
not the way to go.
Well, they beat the guy pretty bad from my understanding.
That's a very weird intervention.
Yeah. And so they were going to try to forcefully put this guy in rehab. And then, of course, thankfully, the law steps in. There's charges brought against these guys. And then Barnes goes back to prison for a while. A big part of this story is there were people, about a dozen people, that testified against this Danny Barnes at his trial. And he gets sent away for, I think with all the charges, once you total them up, I think he was looking at 11 years in prison. He got out after about 10. One of the persons who testified against him was Terry Lee McCoy. And the way that Barnes gets back into being looked at for the murder of McCoy is after McCoy goes missing, he's back in town and he's got a group of people with him and he's out searching for McCoy while he's still missing. Remember, he was missing for almost 20 days.
Right.
And people were suspicious of this because they're like, look, this guy hasn't lived here for quite some time. What's he doing back here? Why is he searching for this guy who testified against him?
And he's known for breaking into people's houses.
And he's known for being violent.
Right.
So this is a shady dude, or at least was at a period of time of his life. Now, what complicates this case, let's say that you like him as your prime suspect. Well, he passes away from COVID. I believe it was about a year after the murder of McCoy. So if he's your number one guy, well, that's a dead end. That's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Even if you
No
think
pun
that it's
intended.
him, you could build a case against him, but he's not going to serve any time.
Right.
You're not going to be able to take him to court. Now, this dude, though, I will give him credit for this. This dude, Danny Barnes, he's an open book. He sits down with the news and he says, look, I've talked to police. I was just trying to help find the guy. And oh, by the way, he's one of a dozen people who testified against me. The rest of those people are still alive and well.
Yeah. And look, the guy had a rap sheet. He was a criminal. He gets out. He becomes a pastor. There's a very good possibility that all this guy was trying to do was to move on. And one of the biggest things, especially if you have a Christian mindset, is forgiveness. This guy knows he did something wrong. It's not Terry's fault that he testified against me. I'm the one that did something wrong. If that's how the guy viewed it, it's again, but if you're law enforcement, these are what you have to go down. You got to look at the buyers, then you got to look at the friends and family, and then you have to look at anybody else that could benefit anything. And now we have this wrench that Terry testified against this individual that we know has broken into houses. We know he can be violent. So now you got to look into him. But the other tough thing too is there something, or was there something going on in Terry's life that nobody was privy to? And I think
it's certainly a possibility.
What makes the case complicated.
Well, and we referenced earlier that, hey, who would have known about what was going on with the sale of the house? I 100%. All right, Barnes is dead and gone. Could he be a good suspect? Probably. Should you look at him? Yes. Should he be investigated? Well, absolutely. Yes. However, the timing of all this, and you know me, I say this week in, week out, I'm a big believer that a lot of these homicides, the timing of them is not coincidental. This being just days before closing on the sale of his home, I think has everything. The sale of this home has everything to do with why poor old Terry McCoy was killed. I absolutely believe that. And I think that somebody realized there was a deadline, there was a cutoff point, and if I'm going to do something that I've been thinking about doing, I've got to do it soon. I've got to act soon.
And I know we've said this a million times before, and we'll say it a million times again. Somebody knows something, and somebody needs to say something.
Well, and let me play this for you here, Captain, as we move into another person of interest, and the person that I think is the best person of interest.
Please bring our dad home. Please bring our dad home.
On July 6th, the 19th day Terry was missing, we interviewed his son Brock and daughter Carrie.
It had to be somebody that knew him. Somebody knew that he lived alone. Somebody knew that he was there at that farm at that time of night alone.
Little did we know.
Now that is the interview that was being conducted by KARE News 11 at the same time that the body was being pulled from the river. And the person that you heard there that said, please bring our dad home, somebody knows something. Somebody knows that he was alone at home that night on the farm alone that night is his son, Brock. One of the people that knew that he was home alone on the property that night would be his son, Brock.
Right.
And that is the person that I want everybody to draw a big circle around him, because he looks very suspicious. Where you could look at all these other people and say, hey, I see a motive here. I ask you then, show me the evidence. And that's where those trails drop very quickly. With Brock, I believe that we have some evidence. So we have information that has been brought to law enforcement that says that Brock was very unhappy with his father. He was concerned that his father was selling his home and property for pennies on the dollar, that the two didn't speak, they didn't get along, that Brock was jealous of some of the grandkids in property that he thought that some of the grandkids were going to be receiving after the sale of this home. And again, Brock knew that his dad, whether he talked to him or not, knew that this guy lived alone and would be home alone. And the picture that I referenced earlier with the broken chair and the little bit of blood behind where the chair is.
Right.
I studied that picture a good deal. And one thing that's not brought up anywhere is some of the other items that I can see in that photograph. Okay. Often brought up is his shoes. You see his shoes sitting there and he couldn't have left on his own. There's his shoes. Yeah. Okay. What else I see in that picture is what appears to me to be 2 bags. These are the fancy bags that when you purchase a bottle of Crown Royal whiskey, they come in that royal purple bag. And there are 2 of those bags that I believe I'm seeing in this photograph. There's also a picture of something. It might be lemonade. I can't tell. But what this tells me, when you tell me that's Terry's chair, that's the chair he sat in every night. That's the chair he sometimes, maybe even most nights, fell asleep in. And I see Crown Royal bags in that same picture next to that chair. Terry was having a very difficult time getting around and walking. That's why he sold his property. He was selling his property. He didn't want to sell his property. Those ducks, those geese, that pond, that was his life, man. That was his reason for getting up in the morning. But his reason I believe his reason for going to bed each night was that Crown Royal. I think the old dude deserved it and he earned it. And he sat there in that chair probably most nights sipping Crown Royal and he would doze off. Now, son would know that. And on top of that, what am I seeing in the picture? I think that Crown Royal bag and that pitcher of lemonade are there because he probably if he had to refill his drink, makes more sense for him to be right there by him because he can't get up in the middle of the night to refill that drink without having some pain or complications getting around. And I think there's a good chance that this son Brock was very upset for a multitude of reasons about the sale of this property. And I think he thought he could stop it and he was going to use whatever means necessary to do so. Now, we do know that there were other people that shared this suspicion. Those people are the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, BCA. They were looking at Brock, and I believe if they've moved on, I want to know why, because I think you still should be looking at Brock. Brock that night, at the time, Captain, he was living 3 hours away. 3 hours away. That makes it difficult, right? He was living in Minneapolis.
Right.
However, he's living at a sober home at the time. He's absent from the sober home that night, according to the people that live there.
Fishy.
Yeah. I've never been in one myself, probably only a few weeks away, but my understanding, there's a bit of a roll call that's taken. There's attendance that's taken at these locations because a lot of times sometimes you're there. I don't know what's the particulars of this sober home, but sometimes you're there because the state says you need to be there. It's a halfway house.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that to be the situation here, but what I do know is we have people that were there that says Brock was not there that night.
Yeah, no alibi.
Not only that, he's gone for like 11 or 12 hours, unaccounted for 11 or 12 hours. So yeah, he lives 3 hours away, but you could drive 3 hours one way, have 5 hours to do something, and then still have 3 hours to get back.
And you said that there's Crown Royal bags, but there's not the actual Crown Royal is there?
Well, the one bag is standing up, so I'm assuming there's something inside of it.
Right.
And the most likely thing to be inside of that Crown Royal bag would be Crown Royal. Let's take a look at this information here. So what we get is he originally says that he's at the sober house. Sober house, police look into this and they go, sober house says you weren't there. And a search warrant of Brock McCoy's cell phone found that on June 17th, 2020, that's the night that I believe that his father was killed. This is at approximately 21 hours. So 21:31 hours. This would be Central Time. Brock's device sent an outgoing text message to a contact that was in his phone. And it states, you can clearly tell this is somebody that's at the sober house. And this is probably somebody that said, no, dude, the guy wasn't there that night. So the text that Brock sends to explain why he's unaccounted for says, hey, buddy, I'm at HCMC hospital. I have an infection in my wound. Gross. He doesn't say gross. I'm adding that. They have me on IV antibiotics, but should be able to come home. Will you let everyone know what's going on? That AA group is supposed to be at the house tonight, and I really didn't want to miss that, but that's how my life is sometimes. I've been feeling like death for 2 days. Thanks, buddy. Enjoy that meeting. Law enforcement goes to HCMC hospital to check their records. They have no record of Brock McCoy, no medical records or EMS records for June 17th or June 18th.
So we got
for
a
him
double
being
lie.
at the hospital. And further, phone records say that Brock McCoy's last phone contact was at approximately 21:46 hours Central Time. So for those that don't know military time, the text that we referenced was sent at 9:30, at approximately 9:30 p.m. And then there was a last phone contact registered at about 15 minutes later at 9:46 p.m. that night. His phone goes offline. There's a window of over 13 hours on June 17th to June 18th, 2020, during which Brock McCoy's phone does not register at any tower location.
And that's fishy.
Yes. So 2 lies and then a window of time of 13 hours where he is completely off the grid and unaccounted for. And look, sometimes we have to keep in mind too, we went over those 5 most common motives for murder, but we also have to keep in mind that murder is a multifaceted issue, often between 2 individuals or multiple individuals. And here, I think we have multiple motives if, in fact, Brock is the best guy to look at. We have the greed, the financial gain portion. We have the jealousy portion. We have the revenge portion. He has all these open concerns, and it's well noted by people that know Brock and know of Terry of this rift between their relationship.
I wonder what Terry's daughter thinks of the brother being a person of interest.
I would like to know as well. I do know that, as we said earlier here, Captain KARE11 has done gangbusters work on this investigation. Really good work by their investigative journalists and reporters over there. So we give them big kudos. We have them on record multiple times saying after his father's body was found and after it was known to the local media that Brock was being looked at and considered a person of interest by the investigating agencies, that since then he has, yes, he's denied involvement, but he's not responsive to interviews, not responsive
Right.
to giving a comment when they've attempted to follow up with him. And again, what we do see is proof, absolute proof of 2 lies, and then a big window of time where he's unaccounted for. Anyone with any information relating to the still unsolved homicide of Terry McCoy is asked to contact the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension tip line. This is at 1-877-996-6222. You can remain anonymous if you wish by contacting Crime Stoppers of Minnesota at 800-222-8477 or dial ** TIPS, TIPS, from your mobile device.
I want to thank everybody for joining us here in the garage each and every week. Thanks for telling your mother. Thanks for telling your brother. Colonel, do we have any recommended reading for the beautiful listeners?
Yeah, and if you don't like your mother or brother, tell your friends, right? Don't tell them that you don't like your mother and brother. Tell them to listen to True Crime Garage. Yes, recommendation. Thank you, Captain. We have so many of them on our recommended page at truecrimegarage.com. Go there. We've recommended plenty of books. We've recommended plenty of podcasts, plenty of documentaries. We've even recommended nonprofit organizations that try to help victims and are advocates for victims over the last several months and years. There's a whole big stack of them there. Give you a week to get caught up. Go to truecrimegarage.com, click on the recommended page, and take a gander at all of the recommendations that we have there for you.
And until next week, be good, be kind,
and don't litter.